Although we've come to the end of the road, it's the 10th and final episode of MrBettsClass Global Final Review Series 1. Everything has led up to this being today's topic, intellectual revolutions and absolutism. So let's do this. We've already talked about the Renaissance and the rise of humanist worldviews, but when it came to science, change was met with a lot of adversity. The accepted theories from the days of Greece and Rome had seemed to make sense, and more importantly, the church had signed off on them. To question them would be to question the church, and with all the excommunication and inquisitions and whatnot, it often ended poorly. Take the heliocentric theory. Before, everyone believed in a geocentric model of the universe, putting the Earth in the middle of everything with the sun and moon and planets rotating around it. It seemed to make sense because if man was made in the image of God, why wouldn't he be placed in the middle of everything? But some began to question that idea. Nicolaus Copernicus studied planetary movement, theorizing a heliocentric or sun-centered model. Knowing the uproar it would cause, he only published his ideas while on his deathbed in 1543. Other scholars like Johannes Kepler built on this idea, proving that planets moved in elliptical orbits. But when Italian scientist Galileo Galilei observed, proved, and published his work on the heliocentric model, the Catholic Church, already hurting from the Protestant Reformation, made him recant under the threat of torture and excommunication. Eventually the church would relent, eventually being 359 years later. This scientific revolution began to spread. Deliciously named Francis Bacon wrote of the scientific method, which stressed experimentation or empiricism. René Descartes advocated the use of reason to arrive at basic truths. Consistent overachiever Isaac Newton basically invented his own brand of calculus, explained gravity, discovered the 3 laws of motion, and most importantly, had the smarts to attribute all this to God and thus avoided persecution. With the help of the printing press, these new ideas began to spread, and the belief that logic and reason could uncover the natural laws of science was soon applied to a new arena, society. Philosophers of the Enlightenment or Age of Reason wanted to use the scientific method for government, religion, and economics. John Locke claimed all people had natural rights to life, liberty, and property, and if a government didn't protect those rights, it could be overthrown. Baron Montesquieu called for the separation of powers to prevent tyranny. Wise guy Voltaire pushed for freedom of speech and religion, and Rousseau and Hobbes each tried to define the nature of what they called the social contract. Now, why was all this necessary? Well, Europe in the 16th through 18th centuries could be an absolute drag. Ha ha. Bad joke aside, Europe was full of absolute monarchs. Absolute meaning total or complete, and monarchs meaning king. Usually, all respects to Catherine the Great. Whereas the power was spread out during the feudal Middle Ages, strong monarchs centralized their power and didn't feel like sharing. Louis XIV, France's longest reigning monarch, never called the Legislative Assembly, the Estates General, into session and instead proclaimed, "I am the state." Most believed in their divine right to rule, or that power came directly from God. The absolute monarch, Philip II of Spain, saw himself as the savior of Catholicism, sending his Spanish Armada up to Protestant England, where it stunningly lost in an upset on par with 1980's Miracle on Ice. Absolutism wasn't just confined to Europe. The Ottoman Empire's Suleiman the Magnificent used his absolute power to expand into Turkey and North Africa. But perhaps the most important event of the age of absolutism happened in England. All the way back in 1215, when King John was forced to sign the Magna Carta, English monarchs needed to follow the law. But in the 15 and 1600s, absolute monarchs abused their powers. Couple this with religious tensions stemming from alternating Catholic and Protestant rulers, and England erupted into civil war. Even when the anti-king side won, Oliver Cromwell's Commonwealth was such a drag that they actually restored the monarchy that promptly went back to abusing their power. Fed up, in 1689, English Parliament invited royal-related William and Mary to take the throne in what's called the Glorious Revolution. Glorious because it was non-violent for once. They did have to agree to a Bill of Rights which limited their power and made England a true constitutional monarchy. And this revolution would echo in the political revolutions for centuries to come. But that's a story for another day. I want to thank all of you for supporting this project. For those of you taking exams, good luck. For those of you just trying to get smarter, good on you. Be safe, and I'll see you next time.